Hi everybody, it's Mark here from the Cadgroup office in Brisbane. Welcome to What's New in Revit 2024 with a little bit about Revit 2023.1. Just going to sneak that in there because there are some features that were released in the interim release of 23 that aren't covered in the What's New in 2024 webinar, and I thought that would, well, in the sort of material that Autodesk releases, and I thought it would be useful just throwing that in because that's something that there's some features in there that you would miss otherwise if you haven't used 2023.1. So as always, Autodesk has broken up the different features into different sections: design productivity, simulation and analysis, interoperability, cloud and data, design optimization, and documentation efficiency. Should be something there for everybody. So just with regards to design productivity, I'm not going to go through the whole list here because we'll be going through them again as slides. But I guess the takeaway here is that there's some updates to the way that Revit looks. There is a new thing called Insight, which is quite handy to sort of give you an idea of how you're using the product and how you can improve that. There's a few nice little features like searching in the browser and so forth, but the big ticket item, I think anyway, in my opinion, is the changes that have been made to the site design. Essentially, we've got full redo of the way that the topography is represented. So it's gone from topo surface to topo solid, which is a big shift, but I think it's actually a really good change. So we'll have a look at that as an actual demo. Simulation and analysis, won't actually be doing any demos on that one, but there are a number of different improvements to the analysis and simulation inside Revit, and that's from solar studies through to energy models, through to analytical models for structural, through to analytical components in MEP models. So that is to say non-modeled, non-physical objects that are placed in there in order for you to do electrical load analyses. There's also under the cloud data and interoperability section there. There's an improvement in the way that coordination models can be used. So effectively, you put a coordination model up onto Autodesk Docs in the BIM 360 or ACC, Autodesk Construction Cloud space for your project, and then you would use that coordination model inside Revit for a number of different purposes. And so those coordination models will then get republished on regular intervals. But there are some improvements. So you can actually go into the coordination model now and snap to it. You can access the properties of objects. Design optimization, I won't be doing any demos on that one, but there have been a number of different improvements with Dynamo and macros and even the API if you're into programming for Revit. Resizable dialogues. I don't know sort of why that one's been stuck there, but anyway, that's something which is good. There's some cramped dialog boxes in Revit, and it's very hard to sort of read sometimes the text and the graphics. So that's I'll show you some examples of that. Documentation efficiency. Now you can actually place multiple views and schedules on a sheet in one go. You can move views from one sheet to another. Interestingly, that is a 23.1 enhancement that's followed through to 24. So technically speaking, it's 23.1. You can open sheets directly from the project browser. So if you've got a view there, you can right-click on that and open the sheet that view's been placed on. You can schedule revision clouds if you need to. I wouldn't say that would be something that you're going to be putting in your deliverables on your sheets, but it might be something that's useful for you to manage the project. And there's a good one here, the ability to align patterns on shape edited surfaces. So when you've got multifaceted floors, for example, with ramping and things, if there's different, the surface patterns can be aligned differently, or they can all be aligned to the same align point. And you've got a choice when you use the align tool, whether you do that, whether you align them all in one hit, which could be a very fast way to do it, or align them all individually. Oh yeah, and also resizing schedule rows is another one. So big change though that's been made in the last few months. If you've gone into the Autodesk Account Center, you will perhaps have noticed that the way that you install software has changed. So when you go in there, you find your product and you click on install, you click accept, and away it goes. What that does though is it downloads a whole heap of files. It's pretty messy. It creates these little encrypted subfolders in your C Autodesk drive. You can't really reuse those. I don't like it. Now, in the past, you've been able to create deployments in the Autodesk software, and that's probably been something more that CAD BIM managers perhaps have gotten involved in, or IT people have gotten involved in. It used to be sort of a bit clunky and a bit complicated, but the good news is that Autodesk have really revamped deployments to the point where I would actually suggest that rather than downloading using that install thing, I would completely bypass that and start creating deployments. So the idea is you find the product and you right click on this little arrow here next to where it says install, and you go custom install. You can create a deployment that contains one product or a number of products bundled together. So you can choose which one you do. You can make multiple deployments, one for Revit and one for Revit and Navisworks or whatever suits you. Then the really cool thing is you can go in and you can actually pick which version of the software you want. So if we're doing Revit here, we can say we want the latest and greatest update for 2024. Now, where it gets really interesting is we can choose which extensions we want to get installed, and we can also choose the content that we want installed, because as you know, in more recent versions of Revit, Autodesk have decided not to bundle up the content. So in this little thing here, you can actually pick the content. When you're finished, you click the next button, and then you save that under a name. That saves that in the account center, and then you can actually download it at the time to a place, say on your network drive. So you can store them up on your account center and come back and reuse them or edit them and modify them later if you want to. I think it's a much superior way of handling installs. But anyway, have a think about it, have a look at it, see what you think. So design productivity. So when you open up Revit, you get greeted with what's called My Insights. I'll have a look, I'll go through those with you, but the sort of personalized insights based on your usage of Revit, what you're not using, what you are you using shortcuts and so forth. Okay, now dark theme. So we can go Batman with Revit 2024. So you've got the dark mode now, finally, and you can have a bit of a play with that one. I'll show you that one as well. New project templates, which are actually quite nice, fully developed projects even with a point cloud in there and everything. As you go through the documentation, there's little question marks on there. You can click on those, and it's sort of a guided tour basically through the entire project, but they can all be linked together nicely. They all work together as an actual proper BIM model, which is great. Project browser search function now works universally across the entire project browser. Now, as you know, Revit isn't really big on customized colors, but what they have done now is brought out these things called color books. So you can create your own color book, which I think might be a way of managing large amounts of custom colors and making a library of your own. Pantone colors have been updated as well. Visual style. So there's a new visual style, textures, which is a bit like realistic, except that you don't get bump maps, so you don't get that illusion of depth, and you don't get reflections and highlights and stuff. So probably a little bit more like SketchUp, I'd say. And that could be a nice little graphic style, particularly useful for people who are trying to run Revit perhaps on a computer that doesn't maybe have a very powerful graphics card. So it's a way of sort of making the model look a bit nicer, but not having that same heavy load. So now if you haven't used Revit 23.1, and if you haven't used 24, then you're not going to know about Twinmotion. So Twinmotion is a real-time rendering engine. It allows you to work in Revit, and then you've got the rendering engine that's based on the model. You can add in really nice effects like people, change the sky, you can change the time of day and stuff. In 24, though, that's been further enhanced. So you can turn on an auto sync feature, which now allows you to make changes in the model and pretty much dynamically update the Twinmotion model to show that change. Okay, here's the big ticket item. We've got topo solids now instead of topo surfaces. As you know, topo surface is I guess, an infinitely thin object that Revit created to represent topography. Now that's actually a 3D object. So that's really cool. A lot of the same workflows still exist though. The method of creation is still the same. You can bring in a CAD file or you can sketch and manipulate the points if you're into that sort of thing. You can convert a topo surface into a topo solid if you've got a legacy project. One of the things though you will find is that building pads are no longer a thing. They don't exist in Revit anymore as an object, which sort of seems like a bit of a bummer, but I don't actually think it's a problem, as we'll have a look at. You've still got property lines and so forth. You can still do grading regions and things. So all those sorts of workflows still exist. So when you go into the topo solid, one of the interesting things is that you can make compound or layered construction. So you can have, soil and topsoil and grass, topsoil, rock, or whatever. The other thing is that you can report things like slope, parameter, area, volume, elevation, and so forth for the topo solids. The contour settings that used to be universal across the entire project are now per topo solid type. So let's just say you've got two different types of topo solid that you've generated in your project for whatever reason. One of them might be a different type of soil composition and different type of rock or whatever. So you've got those both in there. And you do have an option of changing the contour display per topo solid type. Okay, so now there's a few sort of things that are similar to between topo solids, topo surfaces and topo solids, but it's sort of good to sort of not try to confuse the two. So you've got a thing called a subdivide, and that allows you to create an area that's offset from the original. It has to be offset by at least 1 millimeter. It has to be a positive value. It can't be recessed in. It can have a unique material, and it follows the contour lines of the topo solid. So it creates a relationship between the objects. If you change the topo solid, then it's going to change this subdivision. So imagine this is a way of creating a driveway, a road, or a parking lot, for example. It has a material. It doesn't have layers of material, but it can have a single unique material. You can set it up to show contours over the subdivide or not. So obviously, if you've got something like a car park, that wouldn't be something that you'd probably normally show contour lines on. So that's the solid, that's the subdivision. You can cut topo solids. So you can now do Boolean operations. So if I need to create a building pad, what I now need to do is either load a family, which has a void in it, or probably more simply, create a void in place family, and then cut that out of the topo solid. And actually something that wasn't in the notes here, which I think is actually very interesting, and I'll show you a demo of that, is adding, using those Boolean operations to add to the topo solid. So if I had an embankment or some sort of raised section, of a site, then I can actually use Boolean operations, the join geometry operations, create a solid, and then add that to the top of solid, which is, I think, actually really cool. So I'm not going to end up with something quite as fancy as what's in the screenshot there, but I will try to show you some things that we can do. We do have the split tool. So it used to be, of course, that you could take a top of solid and split it. So you could have two different sections. One might be outside the property boundary, which you don't want to touch. And then there's the one on the inside. And that's the one that you want to grade and stuff. So Revit does allow you to do that still, but you actually use the split tool. So it'll show you how that works. Graded regions, I think I mentioned this before, it still works. So after you've set everything up, you can still make a copy of the topo solid, and then you can put them into different phases. You can start altering the topo solid in the new work phase, new construction phase, and then it will give you the cut and fill as you would have expected with topo surfaces. Okay, so you can show the control points in 3D view. Interestingly, you can also, apart from being able to host the normal types of things that you would expect on a topo surface, a topo solid will allow you to host site components, parking grounds, but in addition to that, floor-based elements, which is really good because that gives you a lot more flexibility. And you can also apply a slab edge to the edge of a topo solid. So that's an interesting little thing. Okay, so just a few things quickly here. We've got the ability to, as a new alignment path, freeform rebar. Also, if you're working with rebar, there's a really fast way to toggle the rotation of the bar ends of stirrups. In fabrication, this is not Revit MEP, but Revit fabrication objects. There's a new object that's been added called the ductwork stiffener. That'll follow over into the fabrication software as well, so those objects would appear in there as well. Another thing that's happened in Revit MEP, now this is not fabrication, but this is just the default MEP stuff that's in Revit, is that Autodesk have now exposed a whole heap of different elevation parameters. So for example, upper and lower end and bottom, sorry, try again, lower, upper, and bottom of insulation and so forth, as you can see in the diagram there. So you've got a lot more parameters that you can use to tag the heights and control the heights of pipe and duct, and also use in your filters. In addition to that, your pipes now have a built, the wall thickness is now being exposed as a built-in parameter. So you can tag, schedule, and create view filters based on the wall thickness. It was always there, it just wasn't something that you could really actually use. Also, I think people have been sort of, over the years, complaining about the way that Revit handles the way that you can hide or show insulation and lining in ducts and pipes. And so that's been given a bit of a workover to make it more flexible and easier to handle. Now, scope boxes, especially if you're working on large projects, you'll be using scope boxes. There's an additional parameter there that's been added, which is height. So that's pretty cool. In terms of the way that parameters are listed in your properties boxes, they're now sorted alphabetically instead of order of creation, which is nice. If you are creating Revit content, there is now the family type export. So effectively, if you've got, say, two doors, you've gone through and created a family type, a whole heap of family types, you can export that out. You can import that in to another family of the same type, same category, and the same parameters. You just got to be careful, because if it doesn't have exactly matching parameters, there can be problems with the import. But it also allows you to create type catalogs as well very quickly. Pardon me. Simulation and analysis, there's been a bit of an improvement in the sun setting, so you can do much finer, more precise solar studies, and there is actually a solar study ribbon now. Now, if you're exporting an energy model, GPXML or whatever, it used to be that Revit would only allow you to export the entire model, and now what they've done is they've actually got an option there to only export visible elements in the view that you're exporting from. So you can set up a 3D view, you can use visibility graphics, you can hide elements, you can use section boxes and so forth to selectively hide or show bits of the model, and then when you export that energy model, bits you don't want will not be exported. Okay, now so for those people who are using Revit to do structural analysis, there have been some enhancements in structural analysis. So there's some enhancements in the placing of loads and so forth. Been an enhancement too in that there's now color coding on different area loads just to make things easier for visualization. And there's also the ability to create groups of physical and analytical elements so that if there's a change in the physical element, the analytical element will also move at the same time. So there's no sort of disparity. If you've got a link model, for example, or a structural model, and the object in the structural model moved the physical object, the model object, then the analytical object will now move with that. There won't be a disconnect. If you're using structural steel connections, or I should say advanced steel connections, there is also the automation function that's been added into Revit. That's been available in advanced steel, but now it's actually made its way into Revit. Okay, interesting. The way that flow and pressure drop calculations has been worked is interesting. So there's a few enhancements, but one of the big ones is that flow and pressure drops now work with fabrication elements. So you've now got the beauty of fabrication elements, which are, you know, LOD, let's say 400, 500, which are manufacturable, but also have the ability to create analytical systems and work out flow and pressure drops. There's some other enhancements in fabrication. So there's, you know, a new fluids tab, roughness parameters on straight elements and so forth. Now, in terms of just Revit MEP, this is again not fabrication, but just the inbuilt Revit MEP stuff. There's now the ability to work out pressure, so flow rates and pressure drops on parallel flows. So that's something that Revit struggled with, and also the duct calculations now are offloaded into the background. So if you switch those on, then Revit won't grind to a halt. Okay, and in Revit MEP Electrical, we've now got the ability to create analytical components that are effectively non-model electrical loads. So you can actually put those in by area. So you can say this entire basement has a, you know, a load, a demand load of such and such a volt amps. And you can also take those loads and tie them to mechanical or other types of analytical loads as well. So of course, you know, your electrical systems might be also those demand loads might be created by things like mechanical systems. All right, so in terms of cloud and data interoperability, you can now load in coordination models. I've mentioned that before, but that might be a Revit file or an NWC file. So that's brought in from your project, the actual ACC or BIM 360 project, and it's managed through the managed links. As I said, you can snap to those objects and you can interrogate the properties. It's not editable, just like any other link. There's a new snap that's been added in called snap to coordination models, which actually has the keyboard shortcut of LM. Interestingly, not SM. I guess that's already been taken by snap to midpoint, hasn't it? All right, manage links. So yeah, your coordination model has the same features. You've got reload from, reload, unload, etc. And you can also choose where the collaboration cache. So when you're working with BIM 360 Collaborate Pro, or just Collaborate Pro, you now have the choice of placing the cached models in a different location to the default one, which might help people who are sort of running out of hard drive space, perhaps. And you can also link and import PDFs into Revit LT. There's been an enhancement in the Revit to Robot link. Okay, so Dynamo has been upgraded. If you're into Dynamo, you're probably already all across this anyway. If you're in Revit and you run the Dynamo player, there's now a pop-up that actually tells you what dependencies that Dynamo script uses and tells you if there's a problem and what the actual component is that needs to be updated. Also, the SDK has been improved with regards to steel connections. Micro security has been enhanced. And generally across the board, the API for programmers has been enhanced as well. So there's a whole heap of new features that I think people have been asking for in the API that have now been added. All right, documentation efficiency, resizable dialogues. We'll look at that one. Placing multiple views and schedules on sheets. We'll have a look at that one. Moving views from one sheet to another. That's a 23.1 feature that's made its way into 24. And opening sheet directly from the drawing area. Revision cloud schedules. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but it is a useful way of working out perhaps where all your revision clouds are. Align patterns on shape edited surfaces. We'll have a look at that one. There have been enhancements in the way that reinforcement drawings are being made and schedules. Now here's one for people who are using create Revit content. The way that the drawing order works in 3D families, if you've got things like fill patterns, is a bit hit and miss, or has been a bit hit and miss, I should say. So depending on whether you're looking at it in the family editor or the project, it'll look different. If you print a vector print or a raster print, then it looks different. So that's sort of been a subject of a lot of support calls over the years. And now in Revit 2024, it's completely consistent. So the draw order will work regardless of those different environments and the different print styles. Resize all schedule rows. I actually think this is a really good feature, and we'll have a quick demo of that one. So talking about demos, let's have a demo. So I guess I need to open up Revit at some point here. I'm actually going to open up 23.1. I know you thought you were going to get a 24 demo, but anyway. No, I'm not going to create a wall. I'm actually going to create a floor. And I'm going to then grab that floor. No, I don't want to add a point at this point. I want to modify and grab that one, and I'm going to make that say 1800. Get out of that. Go to the 3D view. I think that's the 1800 one there, right? So anyway, when we added a point, we pretty much had to add a point at a height, and that was in the options bar here, and that was related back from memory. That was related back to the project origin. So what we can now do is, if we want to create a point at an absolute height, we can actually choose which coordinate system we want to use. Okay, so we've actually got internal origin, which I think is the old one, survey point, but project base point, which may or may not be the same, and then just based on an offset from the current level that you're actually on. So we can say that, current level, which I think is level 1, elevation 2 meters from that. If I click there, then that's now placed that additional point 2 meters off level 1. All right, so that's cool. But we've now got also, and again, this is in 2024, we can now place this new point along a surface. Now, if I skim along here till I get to the halfway point, no, this halfway point, isn't it? Sorry. There you go. Okay, so you can see now that that point has actually set itself at 900. The reason being that that's at 0 and that's at 18. So because I picked the snap halfway, the midpoint snap, it's snapped itself to a height of 800, which of course is halfway between 900, I should say. Okay, so excuse me. Add multiple sheets. Open multiple sheets command. So in 23.1 and 24, we can now right click and open multiple sheets. I think you get the idea. I want to do it. The other thing that they introduced in 23.1 and of course in 24 is the ability to grab multiple sheets and then go to revisions on sheet and then change those, because that was actually grayed out in previous versions of Revit, which was frustrating. And the other thing that was introduced in 23.1 is the ability to grab a view, let's say this view here, and swap it out for a different view. All right, now that's obviously in 24 as well. So this goes without saying that these features have carried over. But that was really good. And again, if you didn't have 23.1, then you would have missed that one. And the other feature that's in 23.1 and 24 is if I select these viewports here, I can say move view aligned to sheet. So it could be one or more views. I've got two selected here. Let's say I want to move them to sheet 103. Oh, they were on sheet 103. Let's try moving them to a sheet that they're not on. That'd be smart, wouldn't it? And there they are in the same spot, just like magic. Another thing that was added in 23.1, which was a new feature, is this ability to overwrite the mapping of the IFC properties of an object. So I could say that I don't want something to be exported in the IFC file. I can also override the mapping. So this would have been mapped to floor, internal, whatever it is, but I can actually override that if I wanted to as well. And the other thing that was introduced in 23.1 was, hang on, there we go, IFC down the bottom, is 4.3. Experimental. That sounds very scary and dangerous, doesn't it? So that's now so it's now compliant with 4.3. In fact, even in 24, it still says experimental for some bizarre reason. But anyway, okay, so that's that. The other thing that they also introduced was an enhancement in the select all. So of course, if we right click and go select all instances, previously you couldn't do that with scope boxes, parts, curtain systems, HVAC zones, and openings. So in 23.1 and 24, you can now do that. So good news. I just wanted to handle those in 23.1, but anyway, we could have done them in 24 as well, obviously. So insights 24. These are new features specifically for 24, not in 23.1. So these are in addition to the other ones. So what have I been doing inside Revit? Model modification, 32%. I've been doing 31% of other. I have no idea what other is. Doesn't sound like I've been doing very much. I've been getting ready for a webinar, so maybe that's what other is, hey? So command recommendation, saying you've never used the insert part command in 24. So do you want to learn more about it? Feature, there's a feature that you could learn more about. You can play the video. But here is an interesting little bit of metrics because it shows me that I've used the copy command 131 times. 98% of the times I used the ribbon. I didn't use the keyboard shortcut, which is pretty shameful. So yeah, I'm not using these keyboard shortcuts at all, which I think maybe that would be something to consider. All right, options. Oh yeah, first of all, before we do that, you'll notice that all the icons have been revamped. They're now very flat. I don't necessarily think that they work all that well in the light mode, which is what we're looking at now. I mean, look, you get used to them, but I don't think they're super clear. But maybe that's just me. Maybe you think they look fantastic. I mean, they're still pretty good, but when you go into draw things and stuff, I think the little draw icons might not be necessarily as clear as they could be. But anyway, I'll stop complaining. So if we go to options, we've now got under colors, we've now got light, dark, and system. So if we go into dark mode, boom, there we are, Batman mode, as I call it. So that maybe those icons work a little bit better in dark mode. Who knows? The other thing, though, is that you don't, when you do switch between the different themes, as they call it, your canvas color will automatically switch. So in dark mode, your canvas color will switch to dark, and in light mode, your canvas will switch to light. That's fair enough. But just note that the light and the dark canvas color can be also customized. So my light canvas color might actually not be pure white, and my dark canvas color might not be pure black. All right. So you've always been able to change the canvas color. I don't think they've called it canvas, though. So if we go here and have a look at the insert, I think it's decal types. This dialog here could sometimes get a little bit cramped, and so what they've now allowed you to do is resize that, which is nice. Another dialog which I used to find quite cramped at times was the color schemes dialog, and so now we've got the ability to resize that. Which is quite cool. So that's that. Not a big thing, but I think, certainly not complaining. All right, so sample files. There have been a whole heap of sample files added in. This Snowden is the big one. We've got the normal advanced families and stuff as well. The advanced projects have been replaced effectively by Snowden towers. We've got these this Japanese one here. I don't know what that is. And then we've got the Golden Nugget, which was actually introduced a few versions ago. I think that's a German one, maybe. But anyway, Snowden Towers, very good. Have a look through them if you get a chance. Search bar. So I don't think I've got any windows in here, so that's pretty useless. But let's try opening. I'm going to open a 2023 file. I'm going to upgrade it. I'm going to use this to show you how you can actually convert a topo surface into a topo solid in a sec, not right now. But I'm just going to open it up anyway, because I've actually got some, if I go to the browser window, I can type in window and it's showing me, in this case, tags and actual windows. And if I put in door, then it shows me doors and tags. But it will also show me schedules and sheets that have, in this case, the word planting in them. So it's basically universal. It will show me anything that has that string in it. I think it also uses wildcards as well, which is really neat. Scope boxes. I go into the site plan and create a scope box. You'll see I've got this height parameter here, which is quite neat. So you can go in there and you can see if we've got a view where we can see that scope box. I'll find one eventually, maybe not. Probably just need more visibility graphics. But anyway, so we've basically got the ability to handle the height as well, which is quite neat. Just while we're in here, that graphic style. So, we've got the realistic style still, of course, which shows textures and bump maps and highlights and stuff, and shows you the little RPC people. So you're getting ready to go down to the beach, I guess. But we've now got textures, which doesn't show the RPC people. But if you do have a texture, then it will show that texture. So it's sort of a hybrid between shaded and realistic, I guess. It's just not going to have such a huge a huge sort of nasty effect on your performance. So I've got one of the advanced files here, Snowden. I've done a bit of a purge on it to make it a bit smaller, so it's not ridiculously large in terms of being able to open it and stuff. So excuse me for that one. But the reason I want to bring this one in is because I want to have a look at Twinmotion. Now I'm on a single monitor, so this isn't going to work as spectacularly perhaps as it would on a dual monitor, but Twinmotion, we'll just let it have a bit of a think. So I'd certainly encourage if you really want to be looking at creating presentations in real time, possibly to clients, I'd suggest perhaps having a bit of a look at this one. Okay, so it's just creating a link between the current project. Zoom out like that. So, it needs a bit of work, I guess, in terms of adding in assets and perhaps changing the time of day and stuff. But if I just go back and then turn on auto sync, and then let's just say I grab these. I'm not going to delete them, I'm just going to hide them. And go back to Twinmotion. Just wait till it syncs. Button, force it to sync. Have a bit of a think about it. The beauty of live demos, isn't it? Interesting. I'm sure there's a way of refreshing the screen. But anyway, that is meant to. Oh, there it goes. Okay, function 5. There you go, everybody. I just worked out how you refresh the view. Function 5. All right, so let me close that up. While we're here, I'm going to just show you this align texture. So if I go to the modify align command, you'll see here I've got this pattern entire surface and selected face. So if I go selected face, click on this wall here, click there, you can see that will only align the parts of the pattern that I pick on. If I say entire surface and then repeat that, you'll see the difference. So that entire surface now has been aligned. So that's pretty neat. And okay, so what I did also was I opened up a file with a coordination file in it. This is a coordination file. If I create a wall, you can see that I can actually snap to that object. If I tab, select, I can see the properties. To insert that, I can insert that locally or through Autodesk Docs. It has to be a 3D file. And then I'll just go through this dialog here and find the site and find the folder that I want to link the coordination model in from. Just close that one up. Now, this is 2023 file. So let me just make sure I've gotten everything there with regards to the things I wanted to cover. Yeah, multiple views on sheets was one of the ones that's in 24 that I just need to make sure I cover. I'll just delete these babies. If I go here and select these and right click, actually I don't think I need to, I just drag them down, yeah. So there you go. So that's a nice one. So that's a 24 specifically function. And another specifically 24 function, if I have a look here, you notice that I've got these little filled boxes, which tells me that that's on a sheet. I can now right click and say open sheet. That opens the sheet that that's on. That's nice. And resizing schedules. See, go back to, we need to go back to, let me just close this all up. Sorry. I think Snowden from memory. Oh, by the way, another thing that was done in 23.1 is that Autodesk actually did a lot of improvements on opening file times and saving and syncing. So that's pretty handy. And it's sort of one of those things that you might not even consciously realize. But anyway, here's a schedule. When I click on it, you see I've got resize rows. And let's just say I want to only resize rows that have image files on them. So that allows me to set the row size based on, or allows me to resize rows that have images on them so that I can maintain a decent size so I can see the image. Now, Revit, of course, has decided that it's going to a little bit of a hissy fit. So there you go. One of the useful features, though, is that I can use this as a method. If I've got a schedule that doesn't have images in it, I can use this as a method of maintaining a quite a small row size. So if I set this to a row size of 5, for example, you'll see that all those rows are now 5 mils on the printed sheet. If I put in a dimension that's smaller than the smallest text font, then Revit will essentially keep that row big enough in order for that font to be displayed. If that makes sense. So it's a way of nicely creating a nice little compact schedule. Okay, moving along quickly. To convert topo surface into a topo solid, drum roll please. We go to masking and actually no, we don't. We just go here, can't we? Yeah, generate topo solid. Okay, and we can get rid of our topography if we want to. Bad news, of course, is the building pad no longer does anything, so we have to do stuff about that. But that's the process anyway. So there is certainly a workflow that you can use. So let's create a new project. And let's insert a link CAD file. It should not insert. Alrighty, so there's our CAD file. It's pretty decently sized. I think it's a Civil 3D file. So we go to masking and site. You can see it's a little bit different. Create topo solid from import from CAD. Select the object, and as always, we need to make sure that we select the appropriate layers. So that would be, let's see, CF, intermediate, CF, and what? All right, so we will click OK. We can I should go back here, manage links. I'll just upload that one so it's not in memory. So site plan, there's a 3D CAD file, like so. Go back to the site file. So there's a few things I can do with this. So it is a 3D object, as you can sort of see. It's got depth to it. The base of it's always flat. So one of the things I might do is go edit sketch. So I'm effectively just changing the outline of it. If there was some bit over here at the end that's just totally unnecessary because it's being added in by the civil engineer and it's just something I don't want to see, or I want to neaten up the edges to make it more simple. Of course, those guys, I mean, they're just trying to accurately represent what's there. They don't really care about whether it looks neat or not. So we'll just click there. Okay, so somewhere I have, there it is, my little bit here sitting out by itself. So that just neatens that up. So that's number one. Number two is that we can make this a multi-layer construction. So you can see here we've got topo solid. And I'm going to go into structure. And I'm going to add this one and apply downwards. This one, we'll call this grass. Make it 1 mil thick. Earth. We'll make it 1,000. And then we've got, let's say, 5,000 mils of something else. I'm just going to pick, I'm not going to pick a real material here. Let me just pick concrete cast, maybe. I do have earth, don't I? I've already used earth. Yeah, we have granite. Yeah, granite. I'm going to be really lazy here. All right, granite. And I'm just going to grab a granite. My library of materials. Not particularly worried about looks how it is, but there you go. That's completely wrong. But anyway, just for the sake of the demo. Now you also notice that we've got the ability to any variability in the height of these layers can be constrained to a particular layer. So let's say that in this case, if there's any variation, that we want this layer here to be the one that's varied. I'll give you an idea of exactly what that does. So I'm going to create a section through here. And let's go to that section and make it fine detail level. And you can see that that particular layer there is the one that's got the gradations in it. I had to change it to the granite, then that would then follow. The granite would effectively, the upper face of it would follow the contours of the top of solid. That makes sense. Okay, so just with regards to contour settings, if we select that one, we go to edit type. This is where we control the contour settings here. So we can add different contour settings and stuff if you want to. You can go here and say that you want to preview points. There it is. That will have a big hit on performance. So just be aware of that. You can grab those points. So a bit like your topo surface, you can actually go in and go modify, and you can grab a point and change its height. You'll also note though that if I go to add point, I've got that same ability to add a point along a surface. And I've also got the ability to add point at an absolute height based again on those 3 coordinate systems and the current level. So same sort of idea. Now I also have the ability to create split lines. So let's just say that I want to create a split line. Make sure that I use the snap tool. Should have snapped into that one. Okay, so if I do add split lines, you can see there's a split line there. I don't know if I necessarily got those split lines to actually meet up with each other, which might be why it's disappearing when I deselect it, which is a pain. But the idea is that inside those split lines, you can actually use the paint tool. I don't know if it's going to let me do this, but let's just try it. There you go. So I can use the paint tool. It's a bit of a funny one too, because you can actually use the paint tool on these faces. It's a bit unpredictable though. So anyway, you can do that in the same way that you can do on 3D objects in Revit. Okay, so that's that. You can also take the, oh yeah, so we've got the ability to split this, and this is something that you do right at the very, very start. So what I can do is I can use the, split command. And then if I select the topo surface, you'll notice that Revit actually puts me into a sketch mode, which is quite interesting. And let's just say that my boundary of my property is this shape, and I don't actually want to be manipulating the rest of that site. Now, hopefully this will work. I've been having problems with this where it's been failing. So you just got to make sure it's a continuous boundary. Revit will let you do it as not continuous. It will also let you sketch outside of the topography surface. It doesn't tell you can't do it, but then it just fails, which is a pain. So you can see here now I've got that split bit there. That's the bit I'm not going to affect, not going to change. So I could then take that one and then go to graded region tool, and start to change the internal part here, and then I'll get cut and fill. Okay, so moving on, we've got the ability to create a subdivide. So let's just say that we want to create a subdivision here that represents a driveway. I think I can just draw a line through there. Let's see if that works. Yes, happy days. Go to 3D view. There it is. I can select it. Now, if I just give it some crazy height, just to sort of make a point, then I can do that just to show you. I can change the material. Let's make it wood, hey? Something exotic. A driveway made of wood. Let's hang the expense, hey? You can also change it so it doesn't show the contours. So it will follow the contour of the topo surface, but it won't show contours in the site plan. See if that makes any difference. It doesn't really make any difference because there isn't a contour line running through the center of it. Okay, so this is where it gets a bit exciting. If you do need to make a building pad or any other indentation in it, we can go to architecture, component, model in place. There's a new category here called topo solid. I'll click OK. Let's call it pad. Then I can go and create a void. And then now these draw little symbols here. I don't necessarily think I like them very much, but anyway, I'll just create a very simple extrusion. Where is it? Where are you? There you go. Hiding away. I'll just drag it up like that. I haven't really thought about the height of it and constrained the thing using an actual work plane. I'm being very, very lazy here. But if I go to cut geometry, oh yeah. So the one trick is when you use cut or join geometry on these, you do have to make sure you click on the topo solid first. It's just this weird little thing. I'm sure there's an actual logic as to why you have to do it that way. But anyway, so that's how you could create a building pad. Then you might put a floor in there to represent the actual pad itself. It does sometimes get a little bit slow when you're doing stuff like this, because I mean, I guess there is a lot of, didn't like that. There is a lot of computation going on in the background, so I can understand why Revit might start to get a bit slow. So I'll just finish that one off. So I guess that's really the way that you're going to create a building pad, I think. So let's just wait for it to have a thought. All right, so moving on, if we wanted to create something that represented, say, an area of raised up land, we can go topo solid. I'm not even going to give it a name. I'm going to say that I want to create a blend. Again, I'm not even going to think about setting the work plane and doing all the correct things, as I'm just running out of time. So if I just Let's do that, and we might just move that. That's the top. Yeah, all right, cool. So there you go. So I could do that. I could even make that out of the same material. So I could make that out of grass, for example. And then if I go join geometry, is it going to let me join geometry? It might. Okay, I have to wait till I finish the operation. Okay. So because I've used join geometry there, Revit will sort of pretend that they are one continuous piece of construction, even though I've sort of done some weird stuff here. With that, okay, so that's another thing that we can do. If we needed to represent something with shear sides on it. So you couldn't do that really with Revit topper surfaces, that's for sure. Last but not least, I'm going to go back down here to the site plan. I'm going to place a reference plane through here. Select that reference plane. Let's just drag her over. Let's say tunnel. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go place model in place. Again, we're going to make it a topo solid and tunnel. And we're going to create a void sweep. We're going to sketch the path. We're going to set the work plane to the tunnel work plane. And it's going to force me to flip around to a view section nicely. So I'm going to just create path here, path here. Is it actually going all the way up? Yeah, I think it is. All right. So I'm not being in any way exact, as you can probably guess. So that's good. So now what I want to do is sketch or I could bring in a profile. I had a pre-made profile, but I'm just going to sketch it manually. I'm going to orient to a plane, profile plane. It should flip that around for me nicely. All right. I guess I could change to wireframe if I really wanted to see through everything. But let's just say I'm creating a road here. Again, this could be a preset profile. You could make these up as generic profiles in the family editor. Okay, what's their height in this? Yeah, 6.5. All right, that'll do us. Okay. Now I think before we get out of this, I have to just make sure, before I hit finish model, I have to make sure that I cut. So I'm going to go back to consistent colors, cut geometry. Again, make sure I hit the top of the surface and click the void. And we'll have a bit of a think, finish. And we should hopefully end up with a tunnel. As I mentioned, you can host things like fences and stuff on here, parking components, trees, and so forth, exactly as you would expect. That didn't look so good, did it? Exactly as you would expect. However, in addition to that, you can also host normal face-based component families. So, for example, little desks. Yeah, but something which is really, really good. Maybe that's just the CAD geek in me. But if I just create a wall here, again, I'm not going to even try to align height or anything. Properly. But if I just click through here, I'll just drag that up manually. Very, very bad practice. Sorry, just bear with me. Let's go over here. Salvador. Okay. Let's make that here. So it's not getting confused. All right, good stuff. So there's a wall. Got there in the end. So there's a wall, and I'm going to place a wall foundation on the bottom of it. Oh, good. All right. Now here's where the fun begins, because if I say cut geometry, select my topography, select my wall, and I'll just click cut again, select my topography, select the foundation. What's actually going to happen is that Revit is going to cut out those objects from the topo solid. So if I click here, probably not necessarily all that obvious, but if I say isolate element, you can see that Revit has actually removed the those objects from the topo solid. So I would like to thank you all for watching this demonstration. It went a little bit over an hour. There's a lot to pack in there, but I think we tried. I think I tried to cover everything there that would be relevant for people. I think the topo solids is actually a really good thing. I know obviously it's a change, so you know any sudden change like that can be a bit off-putting. But I would invite people to play around with this function, become familiar with it, because I think it actually offers some really good things which people will find useful. So thank you all for attending. I'll leave you to it. Have a great day, and I'll catch you later.